Hello, everybody. Welcome to Outpost Gray. If this is your first time here, you are in the right spot. I'm your host, Jack Scott, and I provide you information in cybersecurity, technology, and innovation. And today we're going to be talking specifically in the cybersecurity space. And I'm really excited about this topic. It's kind of a hot topic because of the national cybersecurity strategy that recently came out in March 2023, and it's about active cyber defense, or AKA hacking back. So we're going to be talking about hacking back, but also a key factor of hacking back. We're going to talk about cyber attribution and why this is so challenging to achieve when you're going after and hacking back an adversary. So I'm really excited about that. I'm also even more excited and thrilled to have our guest on the show. He's a dear friend of mine. He is a repeat offender here on Outpost Gray. Ron Warner, he has over 20 years of experience in this space. And what I really enjoy about his experience, he is not only has the practitioner experience, but he has the lens of an executive and a CEO. And then on top of that, he is also a professor and a friend of mine. So without further ado, let's go ahead and let's get the guest on the show. Don't you love that?
Jamming
Oh
out with my ukulele.
Oh
learning
my
to play.
God, that's hilarious. Where did you have that stowed away?
Just over here, I practice when I just need a break for a few moments. It's just a good way to get my mind off of the world.
That's odd. Can you play a song?
Not really, a little bit.
Let's do
Yeah.
some drumming. Yeah.
So, can't really get it on camera. I'm still learning. I just got it for Christmas. A friend of mine got me one. So,
This is awesome. Wow. It's very cool.
uh,
I play the piano occasionally. It's hidden over
okay.
there in my kitchen area. And so in the evenings, sometimes I just sit there and play. Well, and my cat just sits there and meows at me because he doesn't like that I'm playing the piano.
Exactly. Mine does the same thing. So good to see you, Jax.
You as well. Welcome back. It's
Well,
so great to
thank
have you
you.
back on the show. How has everything been with you? I've
Going
been
awesome. Having lots of fun working with Forrester Research, doing a lot of zero trust consulting, training with it, helping large organizations build their cybersecurity programs, which is what I love doing. It's my job is to work myself out of a job knowing I never will, and it's that part is going great. How about
yeah.
you? Life's treating you well as you're working through a master's, which of course is
Oh my gosh, it has been good. Yeah, I am. I'm working through a master's and I am graduating in May. Yay, go me. So very excited about that. It has been a very long journey. And anybody that's listening to this that is thinking about getting a master's, I encourage it. The thing that I would just want to throw out there, I would probably really go through and think about if you're going to go full-time work and full-time grad school, because that's what I was doing. And I'm pretty tired, but
yes.
finish line is there, light at the end of the tunnel. I'm stoked. So
It
it's
does
good.
feel good when you're done. And the value of getting the master's degree is that you learn how to analyze quickly. You really
Yes. Oh,
develop
good
those
point.
strong communication skills.
Mhm.
There's still the debate,
Yeah.
to degree or not to degree. That is the
Yep.
question. Same thing with certifications. Understand, but it could be a good checkbox if you want to
Yep.
teach in the future. Some may have it. Many organizations now won't require a master's degree, but
Yep.
it's a good way to build yourself up to be a CISO. Is how I've learned.
That is a solid point. Like, people have asked me, have you used what you've gained from your master's? And I've been part of a really good master's program and I work in the GRC space. So I can actually say, yes, I've actually utilized what I've learned. But more
Mhm.
importantly, and you nailed it, it has really given me so much confidence within my research and my writing. So I
Mhm.
am drastically from starting school in 2020, my master's program, to where I'm at today. When I look back, I'm 100% more confident with my research capabilities and my writing capabilities. So that alone for a master's degree was absolutely worth it for me. So yeah, it's been
Definitely.
a long road, but well worth it.
Yes. Well, good for you. Good for you. I'm excited to learn more about your topic for your dissertation.
Same, yeah, and you're gonna kind of be part of it. So, let's go ahead and, like, kick this, discussion off because it's a kind of a hot topic with the
Mhm.
National Cyber Defense Strategy. It just came out. I've actually made it through about half of analyzing that 30-page
Mhm.
document. I think it's 30 pages, but one of the things they talk about is having a more active defensive posture,
Mhm.
and they call it active cyber defense. So, I think we
Yes.
should just kick it off with can you describe what is hacking back or active cyber defense and what's your experience in that space?
So I view those as two similar but different ideas. The active cyber defense is the defense of it. It's when you see a potential problem, an event, before it becomes an incident, and knowing the difference between events and incidents is critical. Check out the NIST glossary. An event is just something that happened. An incident is something bad that happened. So you're having an event, you're seeing something happening on your network and shutting it off, which could mean a denial of service to, could even be internal people to your clients, but of course to the bad elements, those threat actors who may be trying to do harm. Where hacking back takes it more on the offense, where I am certain that this is the threat actor and I'm going after them. So that's how I differentiate the two, and they do require two different skills. One is more of the blue team, the other being more of the red team. And of course, there's potential technical challenges with it, as well as legal and ethical challenges with both.
Oh yeah, absolutely. There, and we'll jump in. We'll touch on those and what organizations should do should they if they're considering hacking back or using active cyber defense. And I'm glad that you define those because a lot of people use them interchangeably, and they're
Mhm.
not interchangeably. But what I like how I really liked how you broke it down by blue team. Active cyber defense, red team hacking back, somebody that's like an actual hacker. And I think that really
Mhm.
simplifies it, but where the National Cyber Defense Strategy was kind of in my opinion, they were more in the blue team side in that
Yes.
active cyber defense. But I
Mhm.
think that a lot of individuals were thinking, oh my gosh, we're going to start hacking back adversaries. But there's a lot of, there's, there, it's very
Danger,
interesting.
Will Robinson. Danger, Will Robinson
Yes.
goes in my
Yeah.
mind when I hear that.
It's like it's an unpopular opinion in some areas,
Mhm.
but it's a topic that's actually been discussed for since the early 2000s when I was doing my
Mhm.
research. Like this has been a topic for a while, and I'm curious from your experience, why are and I'm specifically for hacking back,
Mhm.
why do you think individuals, professionals in and we'll just talk about like the federal space,
Mhm.
why do you think that they're for hacking back? Where are the pros for us hacking back?
We need to stop the threat actors. They are very active in going after our infrastructure. This we know. We are seeing ineffective response across the board. How long will it take for the US to respond? So many organizations and even individuals are seeing they need to take it on themselves to stop these evil threat hacker actors. You notice I tend to not use the word hacker because it has so many different connotations and meanings. So evil threat actors is what I will tend to use. But people just taking it upon themselves where
Mhm,
they have, and it comes down to that degree of certainty. And this is the challenge where how do you know the IP address, the identity is really the ones that are attacking you, particularly in the world where you can be almost anyone you want on the internet. With a VPN, you can be anywhere you want on the internet.
mhm,
So that becomes the challenge as to how do those who have this hacking back. When I was at TD Ameritrade over a dozen years ago, we had this conversation, large brokerage now part of Charles Schwab. Do we create a honeypot?
mhm,
And then with honeypots, what do we do with that information? Do we just collect it, use it only as part of our active cyber defense? Or what if we see an opportunity to take down a potential adversary? You know, what steps should we take? And these are often business level decisions needing to be made across technology, legal, business strategy, and potentially bringing in law enforcement. So it takes a lot of the different bodies of knowledge to be able to even have a good conversation about it. So this is where I see a lot of organizations also shying away from the hacking back, where again, I see it more on the individual level where people take it upon themselves to do it.
Mhm.
I actually had a high school student who found an attacker going after a well-known insurance company. He's like, "I'm going after him, Ron." And I'm like,
Oh
"Don't,
no, don't
don't."
do it. Don't do
Yes. Here's my friend at the FBI. They would love the information.
it.
But
Precisely. Yep.
yeah,
Pass it to law enforcement. Boop.
yes, you
Yep.
you can get in too much trouble. He was still too green in his skills,
Mhm.
so too much potential for challenges. So that's why we see the difference, the dichotomy between the hacking back and active cyber defense. Where active cyber defense, that's more, I'm going to do what I can to protect my assets, my business, my home, my family, and that is a lot easier to justify.
Yeah.
That act of cyber defense. If I see something malicious coming after me, I have every right to cut it off. So,
Yeah.
so it's a
Absolutely. It almost
fascinating.
it almost sounds like active cyber defense is more of like staying in your perimeter and securing the perimeter.
Mhm.
Where when we look at think of hacking back, it's like I'm going to leave my perimeter and I'm pursuing you now. Like I'm coming
Yes.
after you now. Yeah.
It's like if you work theft for a big box store. Yeah, part of
Hmm.
the strategy for it. And this is where we need to take the analogy. So often in cyber, we like to think ourselves as we're special rainbow colored unicorns. It's different in cyber. Well, not always. When I worked for Spencer's Gifts, we made the decision that if someone stole something and got outside of 20 feet of the store, we couldn't even go
Wow.
up to them. Yeah, I watched someone steal a watch once and take it to the food court, and my manager said, "Nope, it's now outside. We cannot prove that it was something stolen from us. We'll take the shrinkage." Because at the time, I was just a young college student, not trained in how to approach someone who may have stolen something.
Right.
And by the time we contacted mall security or law
They were gone.
enforcement, yeah. So it's just sometimes easier just to take the shrinkage, but maybe note who they were and use it as part of active cyber defense, particularly now that things have moved with the camera technology, facial recognition, where if we see this person in the store again, that's where active cyber defense, we can watch them, see
Hmm.
if they try to repeat it, and then we have our incident response plan in place. And that's going to be part of it, having the technology with the process and training the people.
Yeah. So
Sometimes,
let's talk about some of those challenges associated with specifically talking about hacking back, for
mhm,
example, because this has been a topic that's been talked about recently. Of let's using hacking back to make the adversaries think twice before they
mhm,
attack our critical infrastructures, for example. But you've talked and you've touched on some of the challenges with hacking back, but I want to
mhm,
dig a little bit further into that. So, say, and you mentioned it with knowing you said you had an incident where this individual's like, I'm going to go after this person.
mhm.
I'm going to hack them back. But let's say that happens. What are some of the things that could happen if said say individual is they're like, I know that this threat group, I know, quote quote, that this threat group or this threat actor was the one that targeted our organization. I'm going to go after them. What could be some repercussions if they hack the wrong person, for example?
Oh, so many on the legal side of it. If you cause damage to somebody else and you're hacking back, if there's collateral damage. So, say I suspect you are the one hacking me, Jax, and I go after you and I accidentally take down your whole neighborhood as a part of it. I create a denial of service or other family members of yours. The collateral damage then could have legal recourse as on a civil side. And I'm not an attorney, nor do I play one on TV. But as this, the civil suit could be against me. And then there's also the criminal,
Yeah.
because how do it is against the Computer Abuse Act. I forget the name of the title entirely, but I know it's in your paper. Computer Fraud and Abuse
I
Act.
was just going to say, yeah, computer fraud, abuse.
If I am, if I go after and even if I'm justified, I have proof, but then you can counter sue me and counter take me back to law enforcement saying, well, he caused damage and needs to be prosecuted against it. And it becomes then a very big legal mess. So
Yeah.
it's just treading very carefully, and it takes a lot of experience in how to do it as you're doing it. So one of the things many pen testers, forensics forget to do, because in the excitement of doing a test or forensics analysis, you're just collecting data, you forget the documentation. If making sure you're documenting everything you see, every step, so this way you can prove it beyond any shadow of a doubt if you are hacking back, which takes a lot of
Hmm.
skill and a lot of discipline to do. And then the ability to communicate what you've done to law enforcement, be able to provide it, being able to understand what law enforcement can take as evidence, making sure you're not accidentally corrupting the evidence. I've seen this so many times, Jax, when I work with large organizations. They have a suspect, it could even be an internal threat. So they have an IT person or the physical security go up to the desk and they begin looking at the person's computer, and their fingerprints are all over the evidence, both
Yeah.
logically and physically. The person then would justify, well, it wasn't me. They're trying to frame me. And it's hard to dispute that, because
Yeah.
the evidence was not
Yeah.
protected. And many people are not trained in how to protect evidence, how to use the right types of bags. Do you know what to use for a Faraday cage if you're collecting equipment, microwave or paint can? Use
Yeah.
great
Yeah.
unplugged microwave, by
Yeah.
the
I
way.
was like unplugged. Yeah.
But it takes that discipline. So that's where
Yeah.
most
See.
people, organizations may run into their own problems. They get in front of themselves and they're not able to have beyond that reasonable doubt the evidence to prove, which then again puts that person in potential legal jeopardy.
Yeah, so talking more on the law piece, because this is a big aspect, especially like if we're looking on either side, I would say public or the private sector. During my research, one of the things that we see within cybersecurity is we have the pressing need for protecting direct and indirect losses that are associated to
Mhm,
cyber attacks. But then there's a limit to the investment that we're seeing because we know that
mhm,
cybersecurity is costly. So then you get into securing the infrastructure, but at what cost? And then there's a
mhm.
point where there's a diminishing return. So those
Yes.
executives decide to go, you know what? I am going to have this is going to be part of my risk appetite. I'm going to accept this risk
Mhm,
within my environment. Well, during my research, I noticed that as far back as 2005, in a comparative study of the industry, some cybersecurity professionals were already arguing that passive defense and currently how we were operating within the space was inadequate. And
mhm,
what I found really interesting in this research is they had explained that this posture that we had right then and we currently see today allowed attackers to perceive risk to remain nearly nil. So what
mhm,
that means, it was creating a cost benefit imbalance that significantly favored attackers. And I'm
mhm.
still seeing this, and you touched on a lot of these points, is like these attackers know they can come, they can attack us, and then there's nothing that really happens to them. We've seen a couple of things.
Mhm,
We saw the Colonial Pipelines where the FBI, I think it was the FBI, was able to
mhm.
get some of that ransom money back, but that's like not very often that happens. That's a
Right.
rarity. And so that's why I think one of the reasons ransomware is actually going through the roof because
Still, yeah.
yeah, the law favors them. So we've got
Mhm.
to learn like how can we be more agile by using active cyber defense or even hacking back to make these adversaries think twice before they attack our infrastructure, for example.
So to equate the numerous ideas associated with this, well, first of all, moving from passive cyber defense to active cyber defense as a part of a zero trust infrastructure. As we talked as we were warming up, it's what I do with Forrester, a lot of zero trust assessments, gap analysis, roadmaps for my clients. Part of zero trust is automating access control as much as possible. It's least privilege,
Mhm.
limiting the blast radius. So what even can they do? Where can the adversaries get to
Mhm.
within the infrastructure? Very much limiting it through microsegmentation. But then even at the access control level, automatically shutting down access. if we see, and this is
Mhm.
part of the direction from CISA, is leveraging SIM and SOAR, as well as eventually getting into AI ML to automatically view threat vectors, threat actors. And it could be what's normal, a legitimate user, all of a sudden they're logging in at odd hours,
Yeah.
siphoning large amounts of data. With zero trust, that is now not part of the attribute based, risk based access control. We're seeing an ID has a higher risk, so that ID's access is then diminished,
Mhm.
which then, how this works with your research is that it takes out the human element the more we automate, because then it's the system doing it. It's not a human making the decision. Those are a lot easier to justify
Mhm.
than, oh, we had to leave it to this junior intern to decide whether to turn things on or off because they saw it Sunday morning at 2 a.m. and they couldn't find anyone to talk to and to ask, and they were concerned. So automating as much as possible through newer levels of technologies. And we are seeing zero trust is still maturing, though.
Yeah.
Anyone who thinks you can buy zero trust, it's snake oil. Just
Yeah.
it's embedded in part of many products, but it's not something you can just buy in a box. So long story short, the more we automate, the easier I think this will come. And then as far as the hacking back, the automation then within our log management systems then will help gather that evidence, because it'll perform that log correlation for us across the different systems. So this way, if we need a report about a particular user ID, we'll have a higher degree of certainty. Again, then feeding that to law enforcement or back to professionals. Again, leave hacking back to professionals. Don't just take it upon yourself. Too many opportunities to cause your own damage.
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to pivot on that. That's a great segue into talking about a key challenge that we see with not active cyber defense, but hacking back is attribution, like
Mhm.
the infamous attribution. So before we dive into it, can you take a couple minutes and just for the audience
Mhm.
define cybersecurity attribution and what are the key challenges in attributing a cyber attack and
Mhm.
knowing for a fact it is indeed this cyber either nation state or individual?
So attribution is, how do we attribute, how do we prove to a high level of certainty that a particular entity performed an action? And I don't know if that's the official definition. That was just the quick Ron definition, but I think it's pretty close. Um, but it's having that proof of that entity and proof them along many levels. So think of the OSI 7 layer stack, everything from the physical all the way up to the application, and then layer 8, the human part of it. Often the challenge we had with investigations and forensics, proving between the keyboard and the chair,
Yep.
which humans actually had their fingers on the keyboard performing the action. Just because a user ID was being used. I mean, how many times do we see user IDs are compromised?
Yeah.
And that's where, in my access control policies, quick segue, it's very simple. You are responsible for your user ID. If you want to share your password, go for it, but it's you on the hook if someone else misuses it. But that is part of the attribution, down to what applications were they using. Are they whitelisted normal applications the user should be expected to use? The device level, is it coming from a traditional device, such as the laptop provided to the employee or the mobile device? And this is all part of identifying, part of zero trust actually, and why NIST, CSF, and Center for Internet Security all start with that inventory, identify. Network, what network is this person coming from, the activity coming from? John Kindervag, who came up with zero trust, put it well. We are now moving from just traditional role-based access control. Ron's on the help desk, he has this role, to, he called it Kipling access control. Rudyard Kipling's favorite famous poem, 6 honest serving men. It's not gender specific. Who, what, why, when, how. Grabbing all of that information as a part of attribution.
Mhm.
If you don't have all of that, then what degree of certainty?
Yeah.
Back to risk management. What level of certainty do you have about information? If
Yeah.
you are not at a high level of certainty. Quick story, I worked at Mutual of Omaha 100 years ago, and I forget which virus. It went out through email. A colleague of mine got it and got his home system infected. He was like, well, I'm going to go after the person who sent me this email. And I'm like, dude, don't, because that person was probably infected. Again, collateral
Yeah.
damage.
Yeah.
Um, you may need to work with ISPs to be able to and get them to provide you with, okay, who is actually connected to it.
Mhm.
Again, if they are using VPNs. This is so I talk regularly, about monthly, with the FBI. These are the challenges the FBI has. This is why the FBI asks for as much information as possible when you're engaged with law enforcement. This way they can build the case and have all of the documentation that they know who did it. And then can they prove that they've done it multiple times?
Yeah.
If it's someone whose account has been compromised, it'll usually be one and done. The bad guys will just use that once and then depart. If you continually see a particular activity, then it could be another indicator of compromise. So,
Mhm.
as you can see, Jax, it's a very highly complex. And as we were talking about, the challenges you're having is that it is very confusing.
Mhm.
All of the different laws, all of the different standards. I feel for the small, medium businesses who don't know what to do because they are often lost with an incident.
Yeah, and you when I was through my research, one thing I didn't really see is that we didn't see when an organization, let's say a country, anything, once they hacked back to a hack, there's not a lot of data out there because it just doesn't happen very often. And if it does, it's not
Mhm.
mainstream data because I know that the federal government on our end does it and we just don't talk
Right.
about it. But I started doing some research and I found that Israel actually had done
Mhm.
a retaliation for a hack. So they
Mhm.
hacked back, moving directly to a kinetic space and using missiles against a hacker that
Yep.
had attacked them. And so I would be afraid, since we don't have a lot of that evidence of what that could look like, the retaliation, if you did do like misattribute it to, say,
Mhm.
China, for example, instead of Russia, what that could look like. Because an example, solar winds, like there was a lot at very first when it happened, the attribution was pointing to Russia. And as
Mhm.
they started researching, they started realizing China had some involvement in this. And we've seen historically adversaries have been known, especially the big nation states, because
Mhm.
they have the money and the resources to tweak and manipulate their TTPs to look like another adversary is doing
Yep.
the actual attack. So I think that it's almost in a way like I want your thoughts on if you had a magic wand and it didn't matter the budget, the
Mhm.
team, and you had an attack to your organization, how quickly do you think you could create attribution? Because it is so complex. I
Mhm.
think individuals need to know like this is not something you can get done in 24 hours. Not
No.
typically. I like not unless they left a lot of breadcrumbs for you to be, and then you're wondering why are there so many breadcrumbs for me to find out who it was. Then you have to wonder if they did that on purpose to make it look like another adversary. Like it's a whole
Right.
game.
So of course the answer is it depends. We do see a lot of stupid criminals out there where then they show their Instagram with them holding the money that they stole. I mean, that's famous story there where
Mhm.
sometimes it can be simple. Sometimes the
Mhm.
easiest answer, yeah, the simplest is the easiest. What is that? Occam's razor. Uh, However, it comes back to that degree of certainty. Many of the threat actors are coming in from other countries, as you noted, that may or may not have extradition treaties with the US. So that requires working with, of course, FBI from in the United States, and then they have to work with Department of State, work with, of course, our whole legal infrastructure associated with it. So it's not even easy for the FBI. And when the FBI is building, and you can look at the FBI news stories, they actually have documented where they've gone after the Nigerian prince. You
Oh
can
yeah.
read those stories because actually that's even within the last couple of years where they've had to entice the person from Nigeria to come to the United States to collect the money, and they arrested him in Miami. But it took about 6 months
Oh
to
my
develop the evidence. So it is
wow.
long term to do, and many organizations just don't have the appetite for it. They're
Yeah.
just like, we want it to stop. We want the pain to go away. We don't have resources to dedicate. When I was at ConAgra as a security analyst, my boss basically said, "Yeah, if we get into an incident, we're handing it off to a third party because I don't want to lose you, Ron, for 3 months as you're working to be an expert witness.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we need you with your regular job. Yeah, we'll hire an
Yeah.
expert witness. Yeah, to protect me. That's why we had on retainer professional incident responders, and there are just not enough. I'm often
Mm. Yeah.
asked by local law firms here in Nebraska, hey, who do I know who can act as expert witnesses and forensics and work through the process, for 6 months? And again, it gets expensive too,
Oh, yeah,
Jax.
it's extremely expensive, yeah.
So again, it's often easier just to make the pain go
Yeah.
away, give the problem to someone else, law enforcement, and pray it doesn't happen again.
Yeah, 100%. Cost is a big key for the attribution piece because
Mhm.
if you can't do it internally and you don't have the team, you're going to have to hire a company like Mandiant, for example, that isn't cheap.
Right.
And you're going to bringing in a team. And it goes back to kind of what you said of like, do we go after this person for 6 months and maybe get the attribution? Not entirely sure because maybe it depends on how good
Mhm.
they were with covering their tracks, or do we just mitigate the problem and move on? And so I think that's what we've been doing a lot within
Mhm.
the United States is we've gone from, okay, there for a while it was like pay the ransom, give us our information back and
Mhm.
go. But even ransom payments have decreased because
Yes.
organizations have gotten smarter. They've
Mhm.
decided if they've gotten attacked or been breached, they have the backups, they've done the right things that, and maybe they don't have all their information backed up, but they would rather go, you know what, I'm not going to pay you the $2 million
Mhm.
ransom. I'm going to lose a little bit of data and maybe lose like $1 million, but I'm going to move on because we've done
Mhm.
all the appropriate measures to mitigate and be prepared for cyber resiliency.
Yes.
Another NIST framework I loved or
Mhm.
guidelines that I love is all about
Mhm.
resiliency, which is instead of trying to prevent attack from happening, being prepared to move through it and get back to working operations, daily operations. I think we're seeing that more now. And
Mhm.
that's why organizations, they're like, well, why are we going to stop operations, put my best guy out there for 6 months when we just mitigate and move on?
Exactly. And our talk is coming back full circle, event versus incident. You know, events are perfectly fine. Events happen all the time, or even in a small incident. But you're prepared, you're able to restore quickly,
Yep.
respond effectively, and go back working. And we're seeing that as more organizations move to cloud infrastructure. That's a benefit of it. It's just, okay, spin up based on the last known good image or gold image that we know is pristine, lock out the accounts, do what we can, and then we know more of what to look for as well. Maybe tweak our log analysis, our SIM engine to be able to look for a similar type of attack in the future. But it's that planning. It's the whole Boy Scout motto: "Be prepared." I highly recommend organizations have incident response tabletops where they have this conversation with business leaders, making
Yeah.
sure they've thought through it.
Yeah.
So,
So I kind of want to touch on something because you've got like, you're my 20-pound brain friend. So I want to touch on some political stuff and
Mhm,
get your insights on this because there's a lot of things going on right now globally in this space. We have the Ukraine-Russian war that's happening. There's a lot of political tension. So there's this
mhm,
geopolitical tension, and we've got these nation state actors, and we have Iran, Russia, China, and a few others that are our primary adversaries within this
mhm.
space. How do you think the geopolitical tensions right now are impacting cybersecurity policies or the use of hacking back, for
Mhm,
example? And this is specifically talking from the federal space, so from
mhm.
the public sector.
So when I traveled through Europe, and I had this hypothesis before I went, but I got confirmed talking to people in the Netherlands, Germany, Denmark, Czech Republic, now Czechia. Europeans have a different mindset. They'll trust their government, but they don't trust big business.
Mm,
Here in the US, it's almost opposite.
yeah.
We trust big business, we don't trust our government.
Yeah.
So it's like, oh yeah, I don't have a problem giving Google, Microsoft, Amazon all of my private data, but the FBI may be watching me. Yeah, it's like,
Super interesting.
right, yes. And by the way, if you think the FBI, well, we are being watched. People, yeah, waving
Right.
hi to my NSA and FBI friends watching me right now.
Right.
And you know what? I am perfectly fine with that. I really am. I get nervous because I don't know what Google, Amazon, Facebook may do with this.
100% right.
You
Yeah.
know, they don't owe me anything because I've signed or accepted their agreement by just going to their website or clicking yes, saying they can take and use all of my data however they want. So that's actually part of the politics of this is just how is our data being used? And I know
Mhm.
you talk with Lisa McKee, an expert on data privacy,
Mhm.
where it's how do we protect our own information and which is associated with organizations because organizations have privacy issues as well as consumers. So it's the B2B, B2C.
Mhm.
Again, it's a business decision. Who should we trust?
Yeah. Yeah. So
So,
I want to touch on something you just said, though. I want to, because it made me think of something how Europe is different on their mindset of trusting the government versus big business. And we are like, no. And I think a lot of that has to do with what happened with that Snowden
mhm.
incident. We all know that. And if you don't, you definitely go research
Yeah.
that. But I want to ask you your professional opinion on this. We know that our adversaries, especially Russia, love to use manipulation
Mhm.
to disrupt our government, sow discord. Like that is part of their motivation of like who they
Yeah.
are in their cyber operations and their GRU units
Mhm.
specifically target federal governments. Like that is not
Yep.
a secret. You can research that and you know that.
It is a
You
fact.
It
Yes.
is a fact, right? Do you think that they are the reason twofold that they are the reason that the United States trusts big organizations versus the federal government? And do you think they have influence on why Europe trusts their government versus big organizations? Do you think that they're manipulating us to move in that direction, to think that way?
Very possibly.
Yeah, this is
Particularly
just a curiosity
yeah.
question. Yeah.
So with the Chinese, they think in 5-year increments, 5 to 10 year. They think very long term. So it is definitely within the Chinese mindset to think that long term, to create disruption that can take 5 years to propagate.
Yeah.
Where
Long
I
game.
don't think Russians have that level of patience. And then here in the US, we all have ADHD. If I can't see it, you
Instant
know,
gratification. Yeah.
right. It's the squirrel moment. Look up Department of Homeland Security now, CISA War on Pineapple, where they put this out in 2019. Should pineapple be on pizza? I love this analogy. It's an international debate.
Yes, it should be. I see it on here. It says a war on pineapple, understanding foreign interference. Oh,
Yes,
interesting.
I love it. It explains it very easily because I'll ask this in my class of students, and I have to separate the room, those with or those without pineapple. Yeah, because it creates discord, which is exactly what foreign nations want. And they realize they can do this with our political figures as well by just becoming friends. So I'm part of a group. There you go.
Yeah, I
Which is
just wanted to show everybody. I'm like, it is real, you guys.
yep.
Targeting divisiveness issues, pineapple. And you're right. People get like crazily up in arms about pineapple on pizza. And I'm like, I love pineapple on pizza.
I just like pizza. Yeah,
Yeah.
free pizza is my favorite. So, but
Yeah.
I like pineapple too. So it's just my personal preference, not necessarily those of others. But this shows how how the foreign manipulators are using social media. They're creating connection requests as well.
Huh.
I'm part of a group on LinkedIn who are continually, at least a couple of the individuals, 4 times a week, getting a connection request from someone in a very pretty young Chinese lady
Yeah.
request with absolutely
Yes.
no background, particularly in cybersecurity, and it's obviously a forgery, but just continually. But it's not hard
Yeah.
though to create
Wow.
a fake account,
Yep.
connect with a lot of people, and then begin to slowly manipulate what they're thinking and seeing. We see this with our news media all the time. They can't tell you what to think, but they can tell you what to think about.
100%. I love that.
And
Yeah.
a lie told loud enough and as many times is perceived as the truth.
Hmm. Yeah.
I've
You
learned
say
that.
it over and over again. People start believing it.
Yes, exactly.
Mm.
And that's their technique.
Yeah.
And that's, again, how it can be hard for attribution, getting back to your topic, because where is this coming from? It's not hard to create sock puppet accounts on
Mm.
social media. So how do you know what's true or not? Well, you're military, prior military, Jack. So am I. I was an intel officer. One of the things I learned as an intel officer really dives into zero trust, trust but verify, using many sources for information. Don't just trust one source. So anything,
Corroborating evidence. Yep.
exactly. So anything I'm saying today, feel free, look it up, you know, refute what I'm saying. I don't have any problems with it.
Yep.
I love it when students challenge me to be wrong. Yeah, because that means I could be. I reserve the right to be wrong. However, it's getting people to think, and that's really the number one defense against this.
Yeah. Thinking.
Yep, using the
Yeah.
brain.
Using the brain. I know we're coming up on time, but before we wrap, have one more question for you for just your advice for organizations that might be listening to this that are maybe in that blue team
Mhm,
active cyber defense space and have been thinking about maybe getting into
mhm.
the active or hacking back space. Can you give them some advice on what their first steps, second steps they should do before
Mhm.
they even start deciding to like hack back, for example?
Hack yourself.
I love that.
Build your yeah, build
Yeah,
your own test lab. Get old computers. Find an old laptop. Someone may be giving away.
love
Throw
that.
Linux on it. Learn Linux. Learn Kali Linux, which has all the security tools in it. Create your own vulnerable, so you can use Metasploit, and there's different images that are known with known vulnerabilities where you can practice. Create your own segregated home network where you practice. Like everything else, how do you get good at anything? Practice, practice, practice. So
Yeah.
keep it internally, though. Don't be like Robert Morris, the old Morris worm from 30, 40 years ago, where, oops, it got out of my
Yep.
network.
First worm, right? Wasn't that the first
Yes.
worm? Yep.
Yep. I saw a high school student develop his own virus, and he had no idea he was writing it using cross-site request forgery. It was hilarious. He had no idea he was doing it. And I'm like, okay, you're going to keep this over here because you don't realize how dangerous you are, because he's really talented programmer, really good kid. So, but yeah, create your own segregated. It doesn't have to be expensive either.
Yeah.
Just reading an article, you can throw Linux on something with just like 2 gigs of memory. It doesn't take a whole lot. And then take part in a lot of the free training
Yeah.
that is available. Black Hills Information Security, I know John Strand often provides free training. Plug, if you're looking to be part of a community, FR Secure has their free CISSP training.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
So, even if you're not going for CISSP, but you want to be part of a vibrant community on Discord, come join us. You'll learn a lot about the different domains. It really will help. So keep learning. Learning doesn't have to cost a lot. It really is just being out there, being open to learning.
Thank you, Ron. You are the best.
Oh, my pleasure.
We could talk forever. I
Yes,
know this has been awesome. So I'm going to wrap it with letting everybody know where they can find you. They can go to LinkedIn.
yes,
Just type in Ron Warner. He also has a link tree. You can see right there on the top left link tree, and then it's just Cyber Ron.
yep.
So reach out to him. Wealth of information. As always, you've been amazing. So happy to have you on the show. Thank you for bringing your amazingness to the show today.
Well, thank you, Jax. Always my pleasure.
Always.
Wonderful.
Bye.